5 years ago, we got our first teaser of Starfield, the brand new IP that Bethesda had in development. 2 years ago, we got our first official trailer for the game, showcasing the release date of November 11th, 2022. 1 year ago, we got our first full gameplay reveal video, giving us our first look at how the game will both look and feel. 3 months ago, we got another launch date video, wherein it was also announced that a full Starfield Direct would be joining the Summer of Games Festival in June. 5 days ago, we got a full 45 minutes of solid gameplay, information, lore, stories, and so much more. And about 1 minute ago, you made the conscious decision to watch a full deep dive into this monster of a video. And we're going to take a closer look at perhaps the biggest game of 2023 to review what we learned, speculate on what is to come, and maybe even answer a few questions before the game is even released. Before we get into all that though, I just want to remind everybody that these videos are a labor of love. A love for gaming, a love for the art of creation, and a love for all of you watching right now. If you could do me the simplest of kindness and give this video a like and hit subscribe, it would mean the world to me. It lets me know that you want to see more content like this, and that you enjoyed what I have created. If you want to go that extra mile, consider becoming a YouTube member to get access to special perks and have your name added in a shoutout section at the end of every video. Enough talk, let's dig in. The Direct begins in the same spot every good game begins in, the story. Before we can dive into the story though, we need to first understand a few things about how the game will actually play. Aside from a few features that we've already seen, such as the ability to switch between first and third person, the ability to mine resources, and the effects of low gravity, there are also a few new things we are shown in this introduction sequence. The most noteworthy among them being the data menu, the player character's main menu for accessing things such as our name and time, the current quest, item inventory, which also showcases our current weapon as the icon, our skill tree, ship info, and information about the planet that we are currently on. We also get the opportunity to look at how inventory management and searching will work in this new interface, and a close-up at the creative design of many of the game's food items. Returning to our ship, which we have the option of fast traveling to or walking, Vasco can greet us by our custom name, very similar to Codsworth in Fallout 4. And we are shown that entering the ship does require a loading screen. This is not a huge surprise, but this is an important bit of context, as in the last big showcase we were given, we are seen being able to exit our ship's cargo bay along with Vasco. After leaving the planet, which we already know is another cutscene, we are shown exiting our pilot chair in space. I would surmise that this is either us in space proper or in orbit, as we are given the opportunity to walk around inside of our ship's cabinet before choosing our next destination via a star map. We can see later on in the showcase that this interior space can change depending on the player's preference, but across all the different styles of rooms, one of the things that is given specific attention to is the lived-in feeling, making each space feel more detailed, alive, and like it's a place where people actually exist. Me personally, I really like the design of our starting ship's interior, feeling very reminiscent of the interior of the Nostromo, the iconic ship from the first Alien movie. Upon approaching the star map table in the command deck, we are shown a planetary map of the planet we are currently orbiting, showing off several different statistics as well as different locations that we can land our ship. It should be noted, however, that we are not only limited to outposts and known locations, and we will be allowed to land almost anywhere we want on the planet's surface. Zooming out even farther, we can see all of the planets and moons in the system we are currently in. And as Todd Howard stated earlier in the showcase, we are able to actually visit a planet's moons. We also get a better look at the planetary information screen, showing us details about the various celestial bodies that we can visit, such as gravity, temperature, and the specific type of planet. A few things I'm curious about is what exactly a specific planetary trait means for us as the player. Perhaps a higher likelihood of dangerous weather? Less oxygen, perhaps? At this point, we don't know, but it is something to ponder on. We also see informational sections on the planet's atmosphere and magnetosphere, which I'm not quite sure what sort of gameplay factors these details will introduce, but this seems to be another bit of information we'll just have to wait and see once the game is released. Zooming out even farther though allows us to see every star system in our travel range, which is determined by our ship's grav drive, the part of the ship that allows for faster than light travel. As we see in the showcase, there are some systems which we just can't reach due to them being too far away for our grav drive to be able to reach, meaning that we'll have to upgrade it in order to get to these farther systems. We can also theorize that this may be a way of preventing players from entering more dangerous systems before they are prepared to, as we can see that each system comes with a level associated with it, most likely denoting how much of a challenge these planets will be compared to our own. Another interesting thing to note here is that when selecting another system to visit, we can actually see a fuel consumption meter pop up, showing us how much fuel it will take to close the gap both before and after lightspeed travel. In theory, anyway. This is noteworthy because, if I remember correctly, Todd Howard stated that fuel consumption would not be a factor in the game. Perhaps fuel was actually always intended to be a part of the game, but limited to a greater difficulty level, like how Fallout 4 added diseases in its hardcore mode. At this point, once again, we just don't know for sure, but it's good to see fuel consumption will be included in some form or fashion. After leaping out of hyperspace, we find ourselves in the United Colonies controlled area around the planet Alpha Centauri, being notified that our ship is being scanned for contraband cargo. This automatically raises a few questions, such as what happens if we get caught with contraband? And if we are, will we be able to shoot, talk, or bribe our way out of things? After the scan, we touch down planetside in New Atlantis, where we get a better look at the capital city of the United Colonies, the throngs of people walking the streets, and even a few of the businesses that call this planet home. We're on a mission though, so we head straight over to Constellation's main building to get some answers about these artifacts. Upon arrival, the biggest change that I and many others noticed straight away was the design of Constellation's leader, Sarah Morgan, who has undergone a major graphical improvement since we last saw her. From here, though, we are introduced to the other major players in Constellation. Sarah, who we already know, but then we are also introduced to the theologian Mateo, Noel the scientist, Sarah's second in command, Constellation's financier Walter, ex-pirate Vlad, space cowboy Sam Coe, and Barrett, who we know little about from aside from the fact that he apparently has irresistible charm. This, however, is not everyone, as we can see at least two other people at this table in the trailer whom we have yet to be introduced to. If this scene takes place earlier in the game, we can probably rule these two out as being additional characters who can join later on. Especially since one of these characters we actually were already shown earlier in the direct as a member of our ship. This is also the point in the showcase where we learn a little bit more about Starfield's major cities, something that many people have been excited to learn more about. The beacon of humanity, New Atlantis, the mining city of Sidonia on Mars, the rustic cowboy capital of Freestar Space, Aquila City, and the pleasure city of Neon. It is also during this section that we get our first glimpse at the hostile faction known as the Va'Run, a group of snake-worshipping religious fanatics with as of yet unknown intention, a location known only as the Red Mile and the Key, which is the headquarters of the Crimson Fleet pirates. Moving into the character creation section, funnily enough, one of the first new bits of information we see is that the player is actually able to earn a bounty for misdeeds, similar to bounties earned for killing NPCs in games like Red Dead Redemption. Additionally, we also see for the first time a symbol on the player's HUD, which, if I had to speculate, denotes a negative status effect of some kind. Moving into the actual character creation process, though, we get a better look at how we will be able to create our perfect starfaring adventurer. We get a better look at the page that many of us will be spending countless hours on before even starting the game. The first noteworthy thing to point out here is that, compared to Fallout 4 or Fallout 76, the ability to freely mold our character's face has instead been replaced by slider options, similar to that we see in Saints Row or Cyberpunk 2077. I've heard some people lament about this change, speculating that character creation will not be as dynamic and vast as in previous entries, but seeing as how some people have made characters that look like this, I think Bethesda is trying to subtly guide players down a more realistic route with their characters as to not stick out too much compared to the rest of the game. A few other new changes are shown during the segment as well, specifically masculine and feminine walk cycles, and the ability to customize things such as piercing and teeth options. Our backstory is also much more modular and expanded compared to previous Bethesda entries, bringing back perk-based skill checks and a larger pool of starting traits that we can change later on in the game by completing certain objectives. Regardless of our backstory, however, our journey always begins the same, based on previous footage from other reveal videos, and piecing together bits and pieces from this showcase, we can theorize about how the game is actually going to begin. We are a new member of a mining crew, potentially a member of the city of Sidonia that was previously introduced. While heading down the elevator into the mines on perhaps our first day, we are tasked with investigating an anomaly that the crew has recently dug into. After coming into contact with the artifact, we fall unconscious and have to be rushed back up the elevator from the mines, wherein 2 members of our assigned crew check up on us and use the employee terminal we use to create our character to assess our mental state. Seeing as how I was one of the first people to theorize that we would be starting the game as a member of a mining operation, I feel pretty confident in my theory here. After our journey begins, we learn a bit more about the sort of skills and abilities that we will be able to hone and obtain over the course of our adventure. Every time we level up, we gain a skill point, but we can use that skill point to upgrade one of over 80 different skills, spread across 5 different skill trees, with each skill having 4 ranks each. While I personally would have liked a larger diversity of skills or perks instead of ranked perks, having so many skills available alone is, I think, more than enough to build exactly the kind of character that pretty much any player can think of. Among the dozens of different skills, we are introduced to just a small handful of them in this showcase. Xenosociology, which allows you to mind control aliens. Boost Pack, a jetpack function that allows for even better mobility while in midair. And Neurostriker, which allows us to basically falcon punch bad guys with critical lethality. It is also noteworthy that the dev that talks about this skill specifically, Neurostriker, mentions that they had to max out the physical tree in order to get it, meaning that there could be special skills that are only unlockable by either completing skill trees or by obtaining specific lower ranks first. Once again, like in Cyberpunk. The last thing I want to focus on for this section are enhanced stealth opportunities, specifically the ability to move while pickpocketing enemies, as well as being able to navigate through ventilation systems. While these things might not seem like a big deal, they will be absolute game changers for players who prefer a more subtle and quiet approach to combat. Of course, this isn't just our adventure, it's our ships too. Starting off with our first ship, the Frontier, we can stop at any starport found across the settled systems to buy, sell, and customize any ship in our fleet. And yes, we can have more than one ship, up to at least 9 maximum. While in the customization page, we not only have an overview of our ship's different stats and capabilities, but we are also able to customize as much or as little of our ship as we want. From whole sections of the ship to each individual piece to the color of the whole of or individual parts of our ship, allowing us to create a completely unique ship to rival each and every star in the night sky. The exterior isn't the limit either as far as our modding capabilities extend. We can even select different interior room layouts for the cockpit, hab, as well as different rooms dedicated to things such as crafting and weapon display. We can even have different cargo bays, living quarters, mess halls. We'll be able to make exactly the kind of ship that we've always dreamed of flying through space. Yes, even if it's a giant platypus. For such a grand ship, we'll need a grand crew. And luckily enough for us, some members of Constellation are on board for some spacefaring fun. Each with their own skills, quests, and romanceable options, there is no such thing as too many friends out amongst the stars. Our crew isn't just limited to Constellation either, as we can always drop by one of the many spaceports across the universe and hire more to help in both our ship and outposts. While it is mentioned that crew members can join in our adventure on terra firma, it is never exactly stated if we will be limited to specific companions, or if we'll be able to bring Jim from R&D out into the field with us to catalog the biodiversity of a planet. Since we can hire these people as part of our crew, and we know that we have more than one ship, will we be able to have multiple ships out in space at one time? Running cargo, research expedition, Or intercepting pirate fleets on behalf of other factions? While we don't get any answers in this showcase, it is something to speculate on, and I, for one, would love the opportunity to command my very own fleet of starships. Speaking of space flights, the next part of the Direct goes more in-depth into what we can expect to find out there in the last frontier. During a dogfight scene specifically, we focus on the fact that distribution of energy across our ship will be a big part of any space combat strategy. While putting more energy into our grav drive, for example, will decrease the amount of time it takes before we can jump out of the area, not having enough power going to our shields will make us much more vulnerable in those few seconds before launch. Taking a more aggressive approach to hostility, however, may result in a victory, allowing us to collect valuable salvage and loot from the wreckage of these now destroyed ships. Alternatively, if we're able to incapacitate an enemy ship, we can board them in an effort to take out the crew and take the ship for ourselves, which we can then sell at a star yard. We will also be able to encounter massive UC battleships, cruise ships for the wealthy, and we can even interact with other ships to trade, pirate ourselves, or board a friendly vessel to just enjoy some good home cooking. Exploring Starfield is likely to be the biggest thing that Bethesda has ever done, as devs point out while talking about how the planets themselves were actually made. During an interview with Lex Friedman back in November, Todd Howard talked about how they implemented new technology in order to take a tile of landscape, and with specific rules and limitations, they were able to have a procedurally generated system create entire planets. From there, developers were able to place handcrafted locations, details, outposts, and many other things to give planets a more realistically detailed and dense map to explore. While, of course, some planets will be barren rocks with no atmosphere to speak of, others still will be lush and vibrant worlds filled with animals, plants, and a variety of locations to explore. They also talked about how their new dynamic lighting system works, calculating the way light refracts in the atmosphere, factoring the type of star the planet is orbiting, and calculating a real-time moving sun in order to create a much more cinematic appearance compared to older games. One thing that is not talked about is just how large the explorable area of each planet will be, especially since the actual size of planets seems to vary depending on which planet we're visiting. At this time, the closest thing we have to compare this sort of planetary exploration to is No Man's Sky, with the average planet in that game being about 78 square miles, at least according to the Google Bard AI. If this is actually the case, this is still almost double the size of Fallout 4, meaning that the average planet in Starfield will have plenty of open space to explore. One of the interesting things in this part of the showcase that's talked about is that players may actually have very different experiences when visiting the same planets. As it's mentioned that because of the procedural generation technology, the planet generates the terrain as the player actually approaches, and a separate system generates locations for the player to explore after that. Depending on exactly how this will function and how randomized the feature is, it may mean that mapping specific planets for use in map guides may actually be a bit more complicated than in previous entries, and instead specific types of locations might need to be the focus for guides. Accessing individually generated building structures, navigating repeated types of caves, guides that focus more so on telling players how to navigate areas as opposed to showing them how to navigate areas. Pure speculation at this point, but an interesting dynamic if this does turn out to be the case. Of course, if we find a planet that we like and we want to settle down on it, we can do that by setting up an outpost. Outposts function very similar to settlements in Fallout 4, allowing you to assign crewmates to these locations for added bonuses, and extractors to harvest important resources. Alternatively, players can create little personal bases that they can live in, allowing us to live a nice solitary life on an abandoned moon out in space. A fly cam, similar to the one that was added into Fallout 76, allows players to switch from on-foot building to an isometric top-down building angle. The fly cam would seem to allow for faster and easier outpost planning and construction, whereas on-foot building seems to be most optimal for room-to-room decorating. Just like in space, however, there are plenty of dangers that might pose a threat to our humble little research stations. Combat has been improved to include much more dynamic elements, such as being able to shoot at these blue tanks and the resulting explosion freezing nearby enemies such as this Varun Zealot standing next to it. Much like in Fallout 4 and 76, Starfield will also include a wide range of different weapons, weapon modifications, and even neat additional features such as thermal mapping in order to highlight enemies. Think of enemy tagging in Fallout 4. We are also shown how the boost pack will work in combat, especially in low or zero gravity situations. Zero-G combat will actually function in a very interesting way. Ballistic weapons actually pushing the player back as they're fired, and energy-based weapons not having this effect at all. They still kick back on the gun though, which isn't 100% scientifically accurate, but who knows? Science can get a little wonky in space. Mag weapons are also introduced, which are described as high-powered electromagnetic induction ballistic arrays. For those of you who don't speak nerd, they're basically magnetically charged fire bullets. And in-game, they seem to function as a light-heavy weapon, similar to, say, a Gauss weapon in Fallout 76, capable of shredding through anyone foolish enough to stand in the way of the weapon's built-in laser scope. I say heavy-light because they do also showcase a small handheld minigun, which would indicate the existence of even more powerful weapons. In any case, though, there will certainly be plenty of heat to bring to any conflict. We, however, might not even need to bring any heat at all, as near the end of the weapon showcase, the player seems to use some sort of magic to incapacitate a hallway full of enemies, leaving them, and any loose debris nearby, floating in midair. This, I would theorize, is some sort of gravity manipulation given to us by whatever the artifact Constellation is looking for actually is. At first, this would seem to have come out of complete nowhere, but when we look back at what we've already been shown so far, it actually makes a lot of sense. Based on our theory as to how the game actually starts, we would have already come into contact with the artifact itself. As we have seen before, in both this direct video as well as other promotional trailers, the artifacts seem to have some sort of manipulation over the space around them, as whenever we see them on screen, things are normally floating in some sort of mystical kind of sense. We see this in the temples, we see this when our character is approaching it, we see this as we set the fragments down on the table with the other fragments, and we see it in promotional shots when our character approaches this strange ring-like device that would seem to be attached to the artifacts in some way. What does this mean for us? For the story? Well, once again, we'll just have to wait and find out. As the showcase is wrapping up, we also get a quick glimpse at Starfield's photo mode, seeming to function very similar to that of Fallout 76. This, I am sure, will be a huge hit with fans that love taking pictures in-game, and will only help to foster an even stronger community for this new adventure set among the stars. This, however, is just my rundown of the major parts of the Starfield Direct showcase, and there is so much more stuff in here that I just couldn't fit in here without expanding this video far beyond its necessary needs. New creatures, new plant life, and so many other smaller details that I just couldn't cover all in one video. If you notice something that I didn't talk about and think I should have, post about it down in the comments and let us know what you saw. With this, we officially wrap up the major elements from the Starfield Direct showcase. So if you managed to make it all the way to the end, give this video a like if you feel it's earned, and consider subscribing. Until next time though, I thank you so much for watching, like and subscribe and stuff, and until next time, I will see you all out there among the stars.